What a fucking week. Welcome back to the second official episode of Wrench in the Works. This episode was delayed, so please forgive the lack of consistency and the low production value. But here we go. As some of you may know, I live in Middle Tennessee, and the area was hit by a generational ice storm, and it affected the area greatly. Several inches of snow, followed by freezing rain, knocked the power out and closed most of the roads in the area. Many other parts of the country are also going through similar challenges, but I can only speak to my personal experiences. On January 25th at approximately 4:30 a.m., my home lost power. My entire home runs on electricity, so this also took out my heat and water. My lack of planning for the worst case left me without a way to heat my home and to properly care for myself and my pets. We managed for a while using candles and crock pots for heat. I set up my camping tent in the living room, and using a homemade alcohol stove for localized heat, we managed for a while. I even tried running up and down the stairs to keep my body temperature up. Our best option for heat was running the truck inside a closed garage. Most of this was not safe, but I had few, if any, options. On the morning of the 27th, the interior of the house had dropped below 40 degrees with outdoor temperatures in the single digits. At 11 a.m., with no way to heat the home, I packed up a few things along with my precious cargo and vacated the house. The road conditions were still quite terrible, and drivers needing four-wheel drive just to navigate. I do not own a four-wheel drive vehicle, and upon backing out of my driveway, I became stuck. At this point, I was devastated. I had no way to care for my family, and I was stranded just feet from the home I was trying to abandon. I literally broke down in tears. I reached an even lower breaking point. There were a couple of drivers who attempted to help to get us back on our way, but they were also not prepared for this situation. Thankfully, a neighbor had some tow straps and helped me to get on the road. There's a substantial hill leading out of our neighborhood, and thankfully most of it was clear, and I reached the top without much issue. That is until I reached the top. It was at this point I was stuck again. My neighbor was kind enough to stick with me and was prepared again with the tow straps. I was literally inches from hooking the tow straps up to his truck, and my truck began to slide backwards on the ice. I held on as tight as I could, as the truck slid backwards, dragging me with it. There was another car stopped behind me, and a collision took place. Thankfully, it stopped my truck from sliding further and potentially ending up off the side of a steep edge. The other driver was uninjured and kind enough to work with me later. There was no damage to my truck, and my critters were fine as well. We did get the truck back on its way, and once we reached the main road, things went smoothly. Of course, that's not the end of the story. I still needed to find a hotel, and nearly everyone in town was booked up with people in my similar circumstance. I needed a place that accepted pets, and that had narrowed it down even further. Two places stood out while using an app to locate an appropriate room. Unfortunately, one of them had falsely listed a room as pet-friendly, and I was turned away. The other would not let me book it through the app, and it errored out twice. I finally called the location directly, which of course means I reached a central booking office rather than the property itself. After spending way too long on the phone and marketed to try and sign up for their rewards program, I got an uh-oh, and it made my heart sink. They did not account for the pets while making the reservation. Thankfully, they were able to push things through, and I had a hotel reserved for the next 2 nights. The current crisis was averted. The hotel staff were even kind enough to let me check in a little bit early and let the critters out after being cooped up in the vehicle for over 3 hours. In my haste to get out of the freezing house, I only packed enough clothes for 2 days, and somehow I only packed enough pet food for 1 day. Thankfully, most of the stores in town were open, and I could get just about anything that I needed to get through the next few days. With a warm place to stay and a decent internet connection, I began my journey for knowledge and a search for emergency supplies. I've been through many storms in my life, but never anything to this extreme or this length of outage. When survival mode took over, my first objective was just to get out of the house. I made that happen, although with some great difficulty. My next goal was to try and plan ahead enough that when the power was restored, I could actually return home. Most stores were sold out of supplies that I could reasonably purchase and sustain myself and my family. As roads cleared and the supply chain opened up, stores were getting more and more items each day. Sadly, the most needed items were still unavailable. On day 3 without power, I was hearing rumors that we might end up several more days or even weeks without power. However, I was remaining optimistic, and I still went ahead and added another day to my hotel stay just in case. This gave me a bit more time to plan things. One item I needed to sort out was how to get up my own driveway in the event I could return home at some point. The roads were clear enough that I could theoretically return home, but once there, getting up the driveway was not realistic. Thankfully, an organization called Sumner County Snow Angels was able to help me get to my house. They were amazing and asked nothing in return, but I am forever grateful for the short lift from the main road to my driveway. On day 4 in the afternoon, I returned home to chisel and shovel ice from my driveway as best I could. I spent over 2 hours working as hard as I could to help repair. A colleague did come to help for a bit and was kind enough to drive me back to my vehicle. Also of note, the power was back on at this point. 4.5 days after losing electricity, it was back. Planning ahead for this, I turned off my water well pump and a few other non-essentials that might cause issues if they weren't monitored. The house was beginning to heat up and everything seemed to be functioning. I was optimistic that I would return home the following day. I returned to the hotel, which by the way had delicious brisket grilled cheese sandwich, and I began organizing things to return home the next day. This included grabbing the clothes I'd recently washed in the shower just to have a clean set of clothes. I also put together a list of things to get before heading back to the house, as I knew once I was there, I could likely not leave due to more incoming weather. That night, I didn't sleep great due to the anticipation of returning home the next day. I got up early and stopped at the big box store to buy an emergency heater in case the power was to go out again. I also picked up a few groceries as mine had spoiled over the 3 days that I was gone. Packing up all those things, along with the fur babies, took quite a few trips, but in the end, everything was loaded and we were on our way. I relaxed a bit on our 10-minute drive to our turnoff, but the stress came back once I saw the condition of our road. Most of it was quite clear, but there were still several areas with over an inch of solid ice still present. There was a substantial stretch of frozen road just before my driveway, but I ensured I cleared a section right in front of it just to get a bit of a run up into my own driveway. In the end, the truck made it up the driveway and we were parked inside the garage. I took the fur babies upstairs first before making several trips to gather everything from the truck. After that, I began the long process of returning the house to a livable state, taking down the tent, moving the furniture, replacing the bedding, etc. After a short break, I decided it was time to test the water. I turned off the breaker to the well pump house, so if there was an issue, it wouldn't happen while I was gone. I did turn the power back on the previous day, but only the 110 volt outlet to power the heat lamp that keeps the pump and reservoir from freezing. As I powered up the pump, the reservoir filled and pressurized. I found a small leak from one of the metal pipes leading from the pump. As I attempted to investigate further, it split open even more. Of course it did. Before it could leak too much, I wanted to check the house to see if there were any other issues. None were found, so I turned the power back off to make a repair. Of course, I didn't have a random piece of pipe to fix this, and with over 60 psi of pressure, some duct tape or radiator tape wouldn't work, despite some brands saying it does. Thankfully, my neighbor was home and was equipped with four-wheel drive to take me into town. Thank goodness he was there, because the short stretch of road right next to my home was still pure ice. The parts store had exactly what I needed in stock, and I could figure out how to make the repair. Although this is not a complex repair, there is still a process. Not only are there electrical components to be aware of, but the water has to be drained from the pressurized reservoir. I found out the hard way that it holds way more water than you think it does. After a lengthy draining process and some cleanup with some spare towels, the pipe was replaced and it tested just fine. I returned the next day, and it was not only holding, but it was warm enough inside the well house that the water that I'd splashed prior was dry and gone. So that was my week. Since returning, the critters have been sleeping a lot, relaxing back at their house. I've been cleaning up and deciding what I was going to put in this video. I don't have much content from the week, since I was very much in survival mode, but I sure did learn a lot. So, some things that I learned. Holy shit. I highly doubt that the camera caught that with the volume, but a huge piece of ice just fell off the roof. Things I learned. Most people are good. Number 2, those offering to help don't care about your politics, your religion, your background, or that you only have a two-wheel drive vehicle. They're just there to help. Number 3, we all have a breaking point. Number 4, warm food when it's freezing tastes so good. Number 5, alcohol stoves work, but they aren't as safe as most people think. Number 6, the candle in the crock pot does work, but not as well as they say. Number 7, don't use scented candles. Number 8, there's a reason your crazy uncle or grandpa had supplies for years that just sat there. Number 9, asking for help is hard and it can be difficult to reach the right people. Just keep asking. Number 10, Hoping things will get better doesn't help. You have to take action. Lastly, I've never been a words of affirmation person. I don't typically find it genuine or valuable when people compliment or thank with words. But when all you can offer are words, it can be very humbling. At this time, that's all I have to offer. So thank you to everyone who assisted me during this tough time. Thank you to the line workers and my neighbors for literally rescuing me, and so many others. Thank you to all of my friends, Facebook or otherwise, who offered words of encouragement or offered to help. And thank you to you for watching and listening. I hope my experience is a point of growth and learning for you as well. As a wise bear once said, learn from others' mistakes. You can't make them all yourself.